Hi there, welcome to another SKU Food Recipe for Success, which is presented by FCC. My name is Peter Chapman, and I want to welcome you to today's session where we're going to talk about how to get a price increase. And this is one of the most challenging and I'll say frustrating parts of being a supplier in the food industry. And I know it's frustrating for a lot of people. And so today we're going to talk about a process that will help you increase your chances of getting that price increase and really getting a fair return for your products. And that's what we really have to be looking for, because if you don't have a fair return, you can't do all the things you need to do to sell your products effectively and reinvest in your business and your people. And it just becomes very frustrating and challenging. So we're going to talk about some different components of that. And what I like to do is to try to use my experience. My time in the food industry has been spent, started at a store and had the opportunity to work with Loblaw companies for about 20 years, worked in advertising and marketing, and then on the merchandising side. So I do have a lot of familiarity with people coming in, sitting across the desk from me and saying, okay, Peter, I need to take my price to here or to there. And so today, part of what I'm going to share with you is really just what my reaction would have been to some of those things and how we can make it more effective. So I will take you through a process we use here at SKU Food to help our clients get the right prices for their products. And it is so important. And also it just really changes the outlook on the business when you feel like you're getting a fair return. It doesn't mean you're going to get tons of money, but it's generating that fair return. And so we're going to take you through some different steps and things that you should be working on all the time, and then things you need to do to get ready for that conversation with your customers about the price increase. And one thing about our recipes for success, which has been a really exciting part of our SKU Food business this year. It's been a challenging year, 2020, for so many people. We know that the whole COVID-19 pandemic has really had a serious, significant impact on a lot of different people. And what we're trying to do with our recipes for success is to provide you with insights and help your food business navigate through some of these challenges. And it's great to be working with our partners at Farm Credit Canada on our Recipes for Success series. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with FCC and their support of agriculture, but the reality is FCC support the entire ecosystem that surrounds agriculture. They really do work with the entire food industry from one end of that value chain to the other. And FCC are proud to work with small artisanal producers right up to large multinational food businesses who are exporting to countries all over the world. And they also work with people all throughout the value chain in the food industry, from producers and processors, wholesalers, distributors, equipment suppliers, packaging suppliers. So they really do touch all the different components. And one of the great benefits of FCC working with producers and processors is how much they do understand the industry. And it's not just about understanding the financial component of the industry, but it's also understanding, the entire food industry and some of the challenges that we face and how to overcome them as well. So it's going to have been a great partnership, and we really appreciate the support of FCC to help bring our recipes for success to you each Wednesday afternoon. And our sessions are recorded, so if you've signed up, you'll get a link to the recording, and then we also put the recordings into our SKU Food membership site, so our SKU Food members can access the content whenever they need to get some of these reference materials. And it's hard to believe we've been doing this for almost 6 months now, every Wednesday afternoon, looking at different topics. And today is one that I really feel passionate about, because I think it's in my business, it's one of the ways that is most rewarding, is helping people get to that right point for price. And so why don't we just dive in and take a look at some of the things that we're going to talk about today, so that we can get to that right point on price and help you see the sort of the things that you need to do. And for me, it's very important to think of it as a process. And I'm sure in your food production and processing business, you have standard operating procedures, the SOPs that you use every time you produce your product. And getting a price increase, you should look at it the same way. You can't just call up your customer and say, hey, I need an extra dollar, or I need an extra 50 cents or something like that. That's not the way this works in our industry anymore. You need to really have a process. And that doesn't mean it's more complicated. And I believe in the end, it actually makes it easier to get that price increase. So think of it as having a process. And you also need to consider the current situation. And as we've said, in 2020, it's been a year like no other for us in our generation. But if you've been able to keep your customer in inventory and be able to supply them with the product that they needed when they needed it or where they needed it, then it's a different situation than it was this time last year. So when you're thinking about getting a price increase, you always need to assess that current situation that you're in. And the reality is we probably have seen a slightly more collaborative environment in the past 6 months, as producers, processors, and retailers have probably tried to work together just a little more to bring food to Canadians. So that's the current situation that we're operating in. Also, you always want to think of it as a negotiation, and it always will be a negotiation. We can't assume that the retailer is just going to say, oh, sure, we'll give you more. The price is one of those topics that always will be part of this relationship. And so you have to think of it as a negotiation. So whenever you have that chance for interaction face to face or via email or telephone, whatever it is with your customers, you need to be thinking about price. And it doesn't mean you always need to be talking about it. It doesn't mean you always need to be asking for an increase. But what you do need to be is setting the table and negotiating in a way that is effective, not in terms of saying, you know, I need another dollar, but in terms of talking about costs and understanding what's going on in the industry. So we're going to talk about that. And then the other thing about getting a price increase is you have to be prepared to be relentless on follow-up. And it's probably the two requests that I get most often when I'm helping producers and processors is, how do I get a meeting with a retailer and how do I get a price increase? And one of the things that you really have to be committed if you want to be successful at both of those two things is you have to be committed to follow up. And I think sometimes perhaps category managers think that it's just a bit of a war of attrition, and if they keep putting you off long enough, then it might be a challenge for you to get that price increase. So you really got to be prepared to do the follow up and do the work to get there. So one of the things which I always tell people when we're talking about price increases, that you know that a lot of suppliers, producers, processors have the opinion that their cost of doing business and the cost of producing a product is directly related to the retail. And the reality is there are so many more things that impact what the price that your customers are willing to pay. So it could be your competition's price, it could be what's going on in the marketplace, it could be what's going on in the category. There are all kinds of different things. So we're going to talk about that today. And yes, your cost of production and your cost of doing business is part of it, but you can't just automatically assume that when that changes that they're going to give you a price increase. So we have to just keep that in mind. And we're going to go through today really what this process is. And that's what we're all about here at SKUFood, and is helping bring some tools and insights to you to help you in your food business. And we're going to continue with our recipes for success into September. We've got 5 great lineups for September, and I know Susan will probably put the link to register to our September series into the chat. We've got some great things lined up for September. So on September 2nd, we're going to talk about demos, and there are alternatives to demos, and demos have been such a critical strategic component of food marketing business, and we're going to talk about how you can circumvent that. And really our theme in September is generating sales in this new environment. So how can we take a place of demos? What can we offer that is going to help you drive your volume? So I see Susan has put the link in the chat, so thanks very much for that. So encourage you to take advantage of that. On September 9th, we're going to talk about the whole change in online shopping and how this has really increased 4 to 5 times since March in our Canadian food industry. So what does that mean for suppliers? We hear a lot about what it means for retailers, but what does it mean for you as a supplier? So we're going to focus on that. Then on September 16th, we've talked about service level last week a bit, but we're going to talk more about in-stock position and how that is such a critical piece of driving sales in this new environment. We're going to talk about how important it is and how you can work with your customer more effectively on that. Then on September 23rd, we're going to dive into that retail environment. And you've all been in the stores, you've seen all the changes, and it's still evolving. It's not done changing. It's not like we can say, okay, this is the way it's going to be. But you need to adapt as a supplier in this new food industry in which we're operating, where consumers are not spending as much time in store. I saw there was a piece today from Canadian Grocer just that referenced that, and about how do we try to get people to just take a pause in the store. And right now they're just getting through there as quick as they can. So we're going to talk about that retail environment. And then on September 30th, we're going to talk about how you can develop those prosperous relationships with your customers in this new working environment, and how you can generate sales where you maybe don't have those in-person meetings that you used to. And also, how do you operate in this new world of virtual trade shows too, because that is more and more the norm. And so we're going to help you figure out how to operate in that new world. So we hope you'll be able to join us in September for our series. We've got some great topics. And I'm actually looking right now to see about lining up some guests, because there's some great things that we could have people come in and talk about in our recipes for success. And one thing about the chat, I'll mention, be happy to always entertain questions. I mean, these sessions are meant for producers and processors in the food industry people. So if you've got a question, you're saying, people, why are you asking me? Why are you asking us to do that? Or perhaps you've got a suggestion that you want to share with the rest of the group who are on here today. And we've got people from coast to coast. So please use the chat or the question and answer button there at the bottom, and I'll definitely check them regularly as we go through. So let's dive in and just take a look at this process that we've come up with to help you get that price increase. So the first thing is important is that you got to work in advance. You can't just ask for it. The second thing is we've got to look at demonstrating value, and that's value to your customers, and then it translates into value to consumers, which means your products are selling. Then the fourth thing is we've got to think about the facts. You've got to focus on the facts. Your customers have access to a lot of facts, and they'll push back. So you need to focus on the facts that are available to you. These relationships with your customers have a profound impact on your ability to get a price increase. The reality is that when you have a better relationship that's built on trust and you have a good working relationship, then it becomes a different conversation. So that's important. We'll talk about being realistic as well, because it's a competitive environment out there, and we have to be realistic about the price that we're asking our customers to pay for our products. And then there's also a level playing field that needs to be maintained, and it's your role as a supplier to keep that playing field level between all your customers. And we're going to talk about how to look at the cost of doing business with each one, and how you need to be able to justify, because the reality is you can have different prices for different customers, because there's a different cost of doing business with each one of them. So we'll talk about that. And then, no different than a lot of other things, you still got to bring it to the table and give them a great presentation and convince them and help them convince their boss that this price increase is justified. So lots of different things that we're going to talk about. And this is not an 8-step process. It's not like you can work in advance and say, okay, I got that done, now I'm going to have to demonstrate value. No, a lot of these things you need to be constantly doing and working on with your customers and within your own business as well. So let's talk about work in advance. And part of that means laying the groundwork. So if you look at the media these days, there are all kinds of important articles there about food price inflation, and coronavirus pandemic is driving food prices up and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of conversation in the food industry about prices going up. Now, that doesn't arbitrarily mean, well, we can just ask for a price increase because there's inflation in the entire market. No, but what it does mean is that your customers, the retailers, the category managers, they're in this mindset that says, wow, you know what, prices are going up, we're going to have to accept a few increases right now. So they're in this kind of a different mindset than they may have been last year, where perhaps they would have been in a mindset, well, you know, commodity costs are down and we should be seeing actually a price decrease as opposed to an increase. So think about that. And if you have the kind of relationship where you can do this, oftentimes it's great to send one of these articles to your customers and send it to them. Say, oh, I don't know if you noticed this, or, you know, it could be an article about packaging or something else, but you really want to be able to communicate with them in advance about what's going on with pricing in the marketplace, and kind of create that environment. So when it comes to working in advance, there are four things that I just wanted to share with you, and that comes in terms of sort of the mindset. But in the days, I don't want to say the old days when I was at Loblaw, but a few years ago, a lot of times companies would come in and they would say, it's the start of a new year or a new quarter or something like that, and we're going to have to increase our price 2% because of this and that, and a lot of times those increases would have been accepted, and that's not the case anymore. It just doesn't happen that way anymore. So you really need to think about that in your businesses, that that's not the way that you can do business anymore. You really have to work on this stuff all the time. Another thing that's impacting this is there's this gap of trust between suppliers and retailers. And I'm not saying who started it or why it's this way, but my belief is, after being in many retailers' offices and seeing what they do and how they operate, and even recently we saw where Walmart put a letter out to suppliers that said, arbitrarily, we're going to charge you this fee to support our expansion and reinvestment in our distribution center. There's this mistrust between suppliers and retailers, and we can't fix the entire industry. But what you can do is focus on the relationship that you have with your customer and figure out, how do you get to a point of trust where if you say that your cost of doing business has increased and that's why you need to change your price, that your customer trusts you and does not believe that you're just trying to pad your bottom line, or you're going to take an increase and then invest it with their competition or something like that. So it's building that level of trust. And that's a challenge. That's not an easy thing. And it's not done in one or two meetings. It's something you have to continue to work on all the time in your business. Now, one thing I would tell you, though, is that everybody is in the same boat. I don't see too many suppliers out there who get treated specially or better or differently or anything like that. I think all of the retailers have the same approach with all of the suppliers, and then it's your job to try to move that needle and move that level of trust so that you can have that kind of working relationship. And then the fourth point about working in advance is that you really have to understand your business and the market better than you ever have before. And your customers are more and more sophisticated all the time. They're learning more and more about how you go about doing business, about commodity pricing and what's going on in markets and that kind of thing. So as they get more sophisticated, then that means you have to bring your level of sophistication up, and you have to know what's going on in your business better than you ever did. So if labor is increasing and labor is 20% of your cost, then what is the real impact of that? It's not just, well, I think it's 2%. You have to really dig into it and be able to not share everything, but share enough so that they believe that what you're talking about is real and needs to happen. So you really do need to be a part of it. You need to know what's going on in stores. You need to know what's going on in your market and other markets, because our retailers now in Canada, 80% of the food in Canada is sold through 5 retailers, so they're national. So you need to know what's going on in other markets. Your category in another market may be totally different than the way you're looking at it. So we really need to be just really more in-depth knowledge about what's happening. And I found this chart, and I thought it was a really interesting chart to share. And it's from McKinsey, who are a management consulting firm based in the US, but this is North American data. And what it shows you, which I found very interesting, and I think it leads a little bit to this sort of conversation about trust between suppliers and retailers, but it shows you the profit that's generated. So the blue area is the profit that's generated by retailers, and the black area is the profit that's generated by suppliers. And this is really, they've stripped out, and it's down to the retailer side would be food stores and mass merch and discount and club stores. I believe that would be sort of the component of the retail side. So no clothing, no automotive, that kind of thing. And then on the supplier side, on the black side, would be food, personal needs, tobacco, and let me just make sure that I'm giving you everything: food, tobacco, household products, and personal products. So really things that are sold in a full service supermarket. So what the chart shows you is that starting back in 2004, right up through until 2014, both suppliers and retailers were growing their profits at 9%. So both the growth that they were both seeing on their bottom line was equal. So there was an equilibrium. They were both making about the same. Then once we got to 2014, things started to change. Profitability actually declined for both, but you can see that retailers have been able to actually, over that 5-year period, get a 1% improvement in their compound annual growth rate, whereas suppliers have had a 5% decrease. And that's really put a lot of pressure on suppliers in the food industry because retailers have leveraged their position in the value chain to reduce some of the profits. And another thing that's impacting this is private label as well, because the retailers have more leverage in the categories with their share of private label. So which is a part of the reason that they do it. So you can see that's what's happened in the industry. Again, these are large North America-wide numbers. So, and it also includes Australia, Europe, North America, and New Zealand. So it's really, I won't say the Western world, but it's a lot of countries. So it's not just Canada. So we can't isolate just Canada. But I think it does sort of show what's been going on about how retailers are leveraging their spot in the value chain. So now we're seeing changes to that, though. The whole COVID-19 thing, where online shopping is a much bigger presence, the retailers have less influence. We're seeing companies introducing their own e-commerce and online platforms to communicate and sell directly to consumers. So perhaps trying to offset some of these impacts that have been happening in the marketplace. So the second piece that I mentioned, we talked about work in advance. The second piece is that if you want to get a price increase from your customer, you need to demonstrate value. You have to demonstrate value to your customers. And that's in their terms, not value in your terms. You need to be looking at it in their terms. So service level, we talked a lot about that last week. So what has your service level been? If you're over 95%, then they're going to say, okay, you're doing a great job. You're doing, you know, if that's the target, perhaps the target's 97, whatever you've worked out with your customer, what's the target and how are you achieving it? What's the shrink on your products at retail? Are you selling through in the right period of time so that they're turning inventory fast enough? Are you driving people to their stores with your consumer marketing programs? Are they delivering the category margin that they need off your products? We talk about being a low maintenance supplier. So are you easy to deal with, or are you constantly having problems and having to ask for this or look for that kind of thing? Are you growing the category with incremental sales? Big opportunity if you can bring that to the table. Are you delivering on the food safety initiatives that you have within your business to keep your food safe? Do you keep delivering every week, every month, consistent? That retailers love suppliers who are consistent. And then also, are you bringing some innovation to the category? Are you giving them something to talk about? So those are all different ways you can demonstrate value within your business. And quite frankly, those are the things that position you much better for a price increase. And a lot of these things are not directly related to your price. Yes, a lot of them cost you in your business to execute on them, if it's food safety, for third-party audits and all those things that we're required to do. But they're not directly related to your price in terms of saying, you know, they're going to go, okay, well, you're worth 50 cents more because of this. But if you're doing these things and you're consistently delivering, then your customer is just going to be in a different frame of mind when you come in and say, I need to change my price from X to Y. So think about those things. And I encourage people to have a checklist within your business and talk about this within your entire business. This is not just a sales and marketing initiative to get a price increase. You need to have your production people delivering so that you're giving the right service level. You need to have your food safety people on top of things so that your product consistency is what it should be and it delivers the shelf life that you need to in the store, and you're going to sell through and all those kind of things. So I always encourage you to have a kind of a checklist within your business, and you say, okay, are we delivering value to our customers? Because when you are, you position yourself much more effectively for a price increase. So I'm just going to take a break there and see if people have any questions, as we're covering a lot of stuff about working in advance and trying to to really position yourself properly for that price increase, and then also demonstrating value to your customers. So if anybody has any questions about that, and they say, Peter, well, I'm not sure about this, or do my customers really look at that part of the business, that kind of thing, then I definitely encourage you just enter a question into the chat, or you can use the question and answer, whatever's easier for you. But I don't see any here right now, so I'm going to go back to keep delivering on our process here. But if you do have any questions or comments, then by all means, just put them in there and we'll take a look at them for you. So the third component is that your products must sell. And you can see there, we've got our SKU Food shopping carts on the screen, but your products need to get into that shopping cart. If you have had the conversation with your customer and you said, we believe that we should be selling 100 cases a week, and you're selling 100 or you're selling 110, then you're in a much better position to go in and get that price increase. If you're expected to sell 100 and you're only at 80, then if you get a price increase, will that go down to 70? So you really got to be generating the sales, and that's why it's so important to have those sales conversations with your customers and be on the same page, because then if you're generating the sales, then they're going to say, oh, okay, great, we see that you're delivering on what you said you would do. So make sure that you're generating the sales and getting your products into the shopping cart. And that comes with doing all these things for consumers. It comes with delivering a great eating experience. If that's your product positioning, it's all about value, that relationship between quality and price. Are you delivering value for your target market? And I call home life is another thing. So when the consumer takes your product home, whether it's a grocery item or a perishable product, wherever it fits in the store, does it perform at home for them the way that you've promised that it would? So does it hold up? Does it have the shelf life? Does it have the flavor? All those kind of things. So how does it perform for them? If you're positioned as convenience, then are you delivering convenience for them, or are you kind of just talking about it and not delivering? Health and wellness, big topic a lot of times. And I think as we come through this whole pandemic, we're going to see even more focus on functional foods and products where consumers see that there's a benefit, perhaps a health benefit to the product. So health and wellness, big thing. Food safety, we know consumers and customers are on that. Local, I always put a question mark, but for me, I believe in 2020, local is even more important than it was in 2019. Consumers are more interested in understanding where their food comes from. So are you sharing with them that you are local, why it's important, why it's a good thing? Lots of different things that impact whether your product's going to get in the shopping cart. So make sure that you're taking a look at those, but it really is the yardstick of sales. That's really, you can believe you're delivering on all these things, but if the consumer's not picking it up and putting it in their shopping cart, then you're going to struggle, because your customer is going to say, look, your product's not performing now. So I just wanted to stop. I did see there was a question come in there, and we'll take a look at it from James. Is there one characteristic that stands out more to retailers than the rest? Shrink, consistency, etc. I know all matter, but wondering if there is one that stands out more than the others. So James, I think that's a great question. And if I go back, and maybe I'll go back to my list here. And I think the first thing I would tell you is that all retailers are not the same. So the thing that you need to really take a look at is, who are my customers? And so if Sobeys are my customer, then they're going to have a certain set of priorities, and they may say, I need to make my category margin. That's really important to me. So am I delivering on that with my product with them? They may also say that in 2020, they've got a huge focus on in-store conditions, and they're really trying to satisfy consumers in their markets, especially focused on the West. So we really got to be in stock all the time. Whereas I know if you are a Walmart supplier, they are really focused on being in stock and on time. So they call it OTIF, on time in full. And they are very focused on that, and they measure it relentlessly, and they will communicate with you about that. So take a look at the priorities and understand each customer. And so if you're selling into Sobeys and Walmart, so Sobeys, it might be, am I there on margin? Whereas with Walmart, it might be, am I there on service level? And try to prioritize them within your business. But I would say that really all of the retailers are focused on delivering sales, so growing the category, bringing the things that are going to deliver those weekly sales week after week for them. They need the margin in the category. They have to deliver that profit. Service level probably leapfrogged some other priorities in 2020 because of the huge shift in consumers from food service to retail, and we know about all the empty shelves, so service level probably leapfrogged up higher. Food safety is non-negotiable, so it's really not one where they kind of look and say, oh, you're great at it. They just expect that you have to be there every week. So those really, to me, delivering sales, delivering margin, and service level would be the top three right now, but they do jockey and they do change by retailer. So great question. I think it's a great one and one to focus on within the business. So I see there's another one here. Let me just take another quick look and we'll take a look. No, I guess that was the same one. So if you do have anything, by all means, put it into that chat. And as I was talking about consumers and selling and getting your products into the shopping cart, we have another kind of a checklist which we go through with people. And again, you need to, this is an entire business piece. This is not a sales and marketing piece. So you can go down through that checklist, and sometimes you need to be looking at your own products separately and saying, take it home and see how it performs for a consumer. And are you doing the consumer research to see if it's memorable, or does it deliver on being a global food, or wherever your product is positioned in the category and in the store. So make sure that your products are selling and that you're on the same page with your customers regarding sales, because if you have a number in mind, but theirs is higher, then they're not going to be happy with the sales that you're generating. And when you're doing sales, when you're generating volume, that is the best time to ask for an increase, because your customers are going to be saying, yeah, it sells. And, we've actually outperforming our expectations. So if we do have to take an increase and we've got to change the retail, then we're still going to be delivering sales. Whereas if products are struggling with sales, it's a much harder time to go in and ask for an increase. So remember that don't put it off when you're getting good momentum. Don't put off asking for a price increase thinking, oh, well, I'll do it later. So the fourth thing in our eight-step process, and I use the word step and I shouldn't, it's just an 8-part process, is that you've got to focus on the facts. And your customers are going to focus on the facts that they have the ability to find. And one thing I was thinking of when I was putting this together for today was, in the past, the category manager a lot of times was somebody who had worked up through retail. Perhaps they worked in a store, then went to the office and moved into that category management role, and they had a good knowledge of the category and what happened in it, but they weren't as much sort of a business focus. Now, category managers, most of them, are people who have started and come into that role in the retailer. They're very savvy at getting information from anywhere in the world, and they don't spend the time out in the stores like they used to. They spend a lot more time in front of a screen and finding some of those facts that they will use to challenge people about cost. So you really need to know the facts. So think about the facts in terms of your packaging. So what's happening to your packaging costs? Are you negotiating effectively with your suppliers? Are you pushing back on cost increases and that kind of thing? Or are you just arbitrarily accepting them? Because the retailers want you to push back. They want you to be fighting for that best possible price to deliver the best possible retail. So you've got to give them the feeling that you're pushing back on your suppliers about cost increases too. But you need to be focused on the facts with your packaging. You need to think about the cost of doing business with different customers. So where is their warehouse, one warehouse compared to the warehouse of another? And what are the logistics costs of dealing with them? So that's another component. Labor. Huge issue in 2020. We know that the whole pandemic has forced almost every sector to change how they do business. It's forced you to change your production practices. It's forced you to change your cleaning costs and all kinds of things. So labor is a big difference. And also labor rates continue to go up too. And we know that is an ongoing challenge within business, one that the retailers face too, by the way. So know the facts about your packaging, about cost of doing business with your customers, and labor. Oh, but there's more. There's more. That's not the only ones that you need to focus on. You need to think about your ingredient costs. So what's going into your product? How are those ingredient costs changing? Are you being impacted by supply interruptions in other countries, for example? Because we know the whole pandemic is a worldwide situation. So if you're relying on products from somewhere else, perhaps the supply in those went down, which means the price went up. So you really need to focus on those ingredient costs. And then your cost of production. What's happened to that? We know that we talk about labor specifically, but also the cost of production. You may have to be shutting your line down for more frequent cleaning than you used to. You may have had to change how your line works to give people that 2 meters of distance between them when they're working safely in your plant. Perhaps you even, unfortunately, could have had an interruption in your processing, which we know has happened to some processors. So what's happened to your production, your processing costs? What's going on with fuel costs? And you can see the photo I'm showing there is when gas was at $1.38 a liter in Nova Scotia, where I am. And now I believe we're down to 94 cents. So if I'm a retailer right now, I'm saying, wow, the cost of gas has gone down from 138 to 94. That's like, I don't know, 30%. So we might even round that up to 35 being a retailer. So what impact does that have on your cost of goods? So it impacts your logistics costs, perhaps it impacts some different components of your business. So, and I would have always equated fuel costs having an impact on plastic packaging costs too, because fuel is such a big component of the cost of plastic. So what impact does that have? And then currency. We know that none of us control currency exchange. The Canadian dollar has probably lost value since March. So what impact does that have on some of your inputs? Or perhaps you bring stuff direct from the US, or you're buying international products in US dollars. So all these facts go in together to impact what that price that you're able to get for your product, or first it impacts the price that you have to pay to get it produced. And then that's what the bottom line is, that you need to then look and say to your customer, okay, this is what it should be. And you can't only focus on the ones that increase. If the price of gas, for example, has gone from $1.38 to 94 cents, then what impact does that have on your business? And how can you translate that into perhaps a little bit of a savings? Because what your customer is looking for is, okay, this went up, this went up, this went down. So what's the net number at the bottom? And you just have to understand that they have access to most of these facts as well. So keep that in mind when you're going in and trying to get a change in your price. And you really need to think about it. You can give them some round numbers to help them make decisions. So if your labor has gone up by 5% and it's a 20% of your cost, then that generates a 1% price increase, not a 2%, but a 1%. And another thing to consider, I touched on earlier, the fact that all these retailers are national now and they deal with suppliers in different regions. So if you're operating in Western Canada and your price for utilities, for example, or labor in Alberta, labor is higher per hour than it is, say, in Ontario. So what is your cost of production? If you have a 10% premium on your hourly labor rate in one province versus another, then you need to be able to explain that to them and show them the impact, because they might have just had a supplier from Ontario in their office and they said, well, it's $1.50 a unit and you're trying to get $1.60. And the reality is that 10 cents is all made up by the labor cost, which is mandated to you. So you need to be able to explain those things to them. And I had just talked about fuel and currency 2020 versus 2019. So you need to be able to show them year over year that, you know, here's the impact on your business. And as I referenced on the packaging part, they want to know if it's gone down as well. And that's where you build this trust piece, because you have to be somewhat transparent. I'm not saying you have to lay all your cards on the table, and I would never be an advocate of that. You can't let them run your business. But on the other hand, if you and they both know that the price of fuel is down 30%, then you need to acknowledge that. And if you were in their office the year before saying, I need a price increase because the cost of fuel went up 25%, it's going to increase my cost by 3 cents a unit. Well, if the cost went down by 30%, then didn't your cost decrease by 3 cents a unit? It doesn't always work that way, but that's what the mindset is, and that's what you have to overcome. So the next piece, which is so important, is relationships. Again, you need to be working on this all the time. This is not a one shot, call them up, make friends, and get a price increase. You need to be working on it all the time. So you need to be working on it in the good times and the bad times. And let's reference some of the photos that I show here is that something like the Grand Prix Product Awards. So we know that these things are all happening virtually now, but make your customers a part of it. Make it a celebration within your business. The photo on the right is a CPMA session that was held in rural Prince Edward Island. And you can see there's a room full of people from the produce industry there. But what you really need to see is that there were the top produce people from Loblaw, Walmart, Sobeys, and I believe Metro were all in that room, or perhaps Costco. We're all in that room of, say, 50 or 60 people. So if you're in the produce department, what an opportunity to have a conversation. And it's not that you're going to go up to somebody at a CPMA event and say, I need to get a price increase. That's not what you're going to do. But you are going to be able to say, wow, you know, we're really working diligently to keep our labor costs under control, but you need to understand in our part of the world, labor's up 10% or something like that. And you're planting the seed. That's how you work and you develop those relationships. But you also need to develop them in the bad times. And the reason I put the photo there of the Maple Leaf plant, and this goes back many years when Maple Leaf had the terrible listeria issue in their processing facility. But because I put that up there because I was at Loblaw then, the way that they worked through that terrible issue actually built relationships for them. The seriousness at which they took the issue and how they were upfront and worked with their customers to try to overcome it actually solidified some relationships. And probably, although it was a terrible situation and there were a lot of dollars and cents and different things that had to be figured out, but in the end, they probably ended up with better customer relationships because they worked so hard to overcome that tragedy that they had to endure there. And then stores. So that's such a great place to build relationships. We know going to stores right now is not what it used to be, but hopefully as we work through the whole COVID-19 situation, we'll be able to get back to more in-person meetings and develop those relationships in the store. So you really got to work on the relationships all the time to be able to get that price increase that you need. And another component of our 8 different factors is that you need to be realistic. And I can tell you from my experience, I'd be sitting in my office and somebody would come in and want to talk about a price increase and say the per unit price was $4. And they say, we need a 30-cent increase. And I'm going, 30 cents? That's like, you know, that's a big percentage. It's whatever, 8% or something like that. So remember that I'm, as a category manager, they're looking at it from the category perspective. And they're looking at all the different items they have in their listing. And if you're the only one coming in and needing a 7% price increase, they're going to scratch their head and say, why does this person need 7%? What's their cost relative, you know, whether it's per unit or something that's comparable to the other products in the category? And that's how they're going to look at it. They're going to say, I pay $2 per liter from this supplier, I pay $2.05 from this supplier, and now this other supplier wants me to pay $2.25 per liter. Why does that make sense? Now, there could be some reasons, and you need to be able to explain those reasons to them and be able to justify why your price needs to be where it is. But always remember that they're going to have to apply a category margin to that. So make sure when you do need to go in and get a price increase that you take a look at the category in the store. Go in and look at it and look at the shelf and say, okay, what's going on here? What's happening with retails? And take it back to that per comparable unit so you can do the comparison the same way they would and just get a feel for what's going on within the category. And then the next thing you need to do is say, what impact is it going to have on my retail? So if they're using a 30% margin, which I know we feel they make too much money, but you're never going to win that argument right now. So if they've been making a 30% margin on your products up until now, and you need to take a 10-cent per unit price increase, what happens to the retail? So if they're at, say, $3.99 for your product, and this is going to take the retail price to $4.29 or something like that, what does that do to your product within the category and also from a sales perspective? So just understand that. It doesn't mean you shouldn't ask for the increase, because the reality is they're going to have to take the price up if you go in with an increase, because they cannot sacrifice margin just to try to sell different products. So you really need to just take a look and say what's going to happen to the retail. And sometimes you might look at a stepped approach and that kind of thing. So think about the ramifications of the increase, where you're going to be within the category. Think of what it means for ad prices down the road and some of those kind of different things. Also, it might mean at some point you need to consider a size change, because you're going to get over, say, a $5 price point, which may be the ceiling, and you're going to say, oh, sales are going to slow down, so we may have to look at something from a size perspective. So it's really a lot of different things to consider when you're trying to get that increase that you need for your business. And again, if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I've been going through a lot of the content here to try to help you figure out how to get that price increase. So we just got a couple different sections left, but by all means, if you've got any questions, happy to answer them. So when you're looking at your pricing and what you're charging different customers, it's totally realistic to have different prices for different customers. The cost of doing business with Loblaw is different than it is with Costco, is different than it is with Walmart. So you need to assess that within your own business. And if any of you have done business with Costco, you know that they automatically off the top, they look at it and they say, okay, if you're selling to Sobeys at and the retail is $5, we believe that they have a 30% margin in that category. And so then they would bring that back to a price that they would estimate you sell to Sobeys for. And then they would say, because of all the things you have to do with Sobeys, like air miles and ads and in-stores and this and that, we believe that you have a trade spend with Sobeys of X, so we're going to subtract that off your price, and here's what the cost really should be. So that's an example of keeping that level playing field, because they're telling you it's a different cost of doing business with Costco than it is with a retailer like Sobeys or Loblaw, one of the other ones. So you really need to assess that level playing field and see what what your cost should be to each of your customers. And that's your job as a supplier. You really do need to do that. And you just need to be able to justify it. Doesn't mean that you are ever going to share that with them, right, or with the other ones or anything like that. But you just need to be able to justify it when you look in the mirror and say, yes, I'm charging the right price to each of these different customers. And then the last thing you need to do is show up with a great presentation. You've got to wow them. You've got to convince them. But my experience has been the price increases that happen the most seamlessly are the ones where the category manager is already there before you go in. So because of the work you've done, then when you go in with that fantastic presentation and you take them through, here's why, here's what's going on, all the different reasons, then they're going to say, yeah, we understand. We realize why this has to happen, and we don't like it. Nobody likes it when a price goes up, because we all feel like we're losing ground, or that it's going to slow down sales or that kind of thing. So really, you've got to wow them with that great presentation, and that's an important component of all this. And now you got to do it probably online, but that's fine. I mean, we can all do that, and it's actually, I think, between you and me, I think it's actually a little bit easier to get a hold of category managers right now. So don't tell them I said that, because then they'll make it hard to get a hold of them. But I really do believe right now it's actually a little easier to get some time with them to talk about some of these things. So as we've been talking, here are the different 8 things that I think you need to be working on to get that price increase within your business. You got to work in advance. So all those kind of things where you're planting the seed to get to there. You've got to show them throughout the year, 52 weeks of the year, that you demonstrate value to them in their terms, not your definition of value, but the retailer's definition of value. Then your products have got to hit the sales targets. You've got to be selling. You've got to be really turning over product to show them that you have the sales that you need to keep the product on the shelf, to generate you to really make it so that your space is contributing to their bottom line. You got to focus on the facts. Remember all those different facts I went through: packaging and labor and cost of doing business and ingredients and your processing production costs and currency and fuel, all those different facts, because they have access to them as well. So you need to focus on them. You've got to continuously work on the relationship during the good times and the bad. You really got to be realistic about the increase that you need to get, and maintain that level playing field across your customers, and bring it all together and wow them with a great presentation when you go in, so that they really have no choice but to say, yeah, you know what, you're right, that is the right price for your product. And that's really one of the things that I think about, is that it's the right price. It's not an increase or anything like that. It's the right price. So I see there's a question or comment here from Jeff, so I'll just take a look at it. This is struggling with an increase denied for a couple of years by one customer. Wow, that's tough when they're being like that. They look at the market on a raw scallops worldwide. Well, we've been committed to one farm for decades due to consistent quality product with an acceptable moisture content. And that's a big issue in that industry, is there are a lot of variables with regards to moisture content. So it isn't the cheapest product in the world. They appear to be experts at avoiding, discrediting, and declining an increase. And I agree. I think, and I think some of them, unfortunately, the reality is they take pride in that, which is not right, in my opinion. But I think that it's about demonstrating that value. And I don't know, on the scallop one, it's almost where you want to take product in and cook it for them and show them that a great quality scallop is so different when it's cooked compared to a product that's been pumped or has too high of a, you know, the product that they put in to increase the size artificially. So it's being able to compare that. And sometimes customers are not the right customers, you know, that case there, they don't understand the value of the product as well as they should. And it's always difficult to say that to them, but sometimes it's good to demonstrate it to them. So perhaps there's a way to try to demonstrate that difference for them, and take the frying pan right in, and when you can be together in the same room, cook it for them so that they understand it. So thanks for your comment, Jeff. And I know that they're very good at that, unfortunately, especially some of them. And I do see that Susan put in the link for September, and so I want to invite you to join us in September again for the different things that we have on tap for September. We got a great lineup for September, and also I just wanted to, as we do every week, share some good news and some things that are changing in our industry, so that you have a chance to see some of that, because it has been a very challenging time, and I think we do need to focus on some of the things that are happening, and share some good news as well. So the first one that I had this week was that food service sales are rebounding. So this is from Syngenta. Obviously, they have a bit of a vested interest in this, but it's coming from StatsCan, is that that food service sales rose by 27% in June from the May number, so that's up a fair amount. But I think we also have to be realistic that it's still down 37% from the same month last year. So it has increased in May, increased again in June. So consumers are coming back to food service, but still down close to 40% from the same month the previous year. And the biggest increases were full service restaurants were up 60% from the previous month. And then special food services like food trucks were also up by about 20% from the previous month. So we're starting to see some change happening in the market. And if you're a supplier in the food industry who's supplied into the food service channel, then you can start to see some rebound from the devastating sales that we've had. And certainly still not at an acceptable level for that industry to be able to excuse me, survive, let alone thrive, but it is moving in the right direction. The second positive thing I wanted to share with you this month is some really exciting news about Second Harvest, and the Canadian Produce Marketing Association, CPMA, are partnering, and they've been approved for $22 million to purchase and redistribute surplus food. And so what they're doing is working with different producers and processors across a lot of different commodities, and not just produce. They're working in produce, meat, seafood, and they're going to be able to find where there's excess food and use that to supply communities who need food. And we know that during these challenging times, a lot of people have lost jobs, A lot of households are struggling because kids are home, parents can't go to work and that kind of thing. So we know that there are more and more people at food banks across Canada. So Second Harvest and the CPMA are partnering, and the good thing is for producers and processors is that food will be purchased, not just donated. So there will be some return for the producers and processors as well. So I think that one looks like it could be a win-win for all people who are in that value chain. And the last one I wanted to share with you is something that, if you were with us a few weeks ago, I shared some information from Stuart Samuel at IGD, and excuse me, IGD do a great job of summarizing what's going on in retail. They also do some work on the CPG side as well. And I really am interested to see what they say about what's going on with the pandemic and how suppliers are responding. So a few weeks ago, I shared some information about Hershey's response. So today I saw an article about how Mars Wrigley are responding. And one thing that they're doing is they have developed their own app for Halloween. So they want consumers to download this app. They can set it up to do virtual trick-or-treating. And I don't know, I didn't see exactly how all this is going to work, but we know everybody's online way more than they were prior to the pandemic. So they've set up this app so that consumers can go on there, do virtual trick-or-treating. And I know there's a picture of the app there. You can see where even at the bottom it says play a trick. So perhaps there's some things that, excuse me, kids can do to play a trick on somebody. But they're really trying to merge that digital and physical world. And they're going to launch the app on October 1st. So have a look for it. Go in and see what they're doing, because it is a different environment, especially these highly seasonal categories where we depended on store traffic to drive volume. The other thing they're doing is they moved up their shipment dates to give consumers a longer time period to buy all those Halloween products. And they think that there's going to be a lot more sort of localized trick-or-treating, not going out to neighborhoods that people don't know, staying home even, and that kind of thing. So much more of the candy and treats will be bought and distributed within the consumer's own home. So they want to give more time for that to happen. So working with their retail partners to extend the season and the time to distribute in stores. So it's important that we think about these in different environment that we're working in. And I know that we're going to talk about a lot of that in September. So I know Susan put the link in there. So hopefully you can join us in September for our next Recipes for Success, which are presented by FCC. And I don't see that we have any questions in the chat, in the Q&A. So I appreciate those people who did comment and had some questions. If there's any follow-up that you have, you can always get me, Peter at SKUFood.com, or you can call me at 902-489-2900. And I'd always be happy to have a chat with you about what's going on in the industry. I also see, there's a comment from Emily that I actually heard this on the radio yesterday too, that we must be getting close to fall because Starbucks released their pumpkin spice latte early. So you see Starbucks are doing the same thing. They're trying to extend that season because people are probably not visiting as much as they were. So they're out there early with their pumpkin spice lattes. So there's a little free promotion for Starbucks today. You can get out and have one. And somebody also, Todd, I see a comment that says sampler was a great idea. We're using it for a program in January. That's awesome. Great. I'm glad that people are getting some great ideas from our Recipes for Success. That's great. And I look forward to hearing how it works out, because I know somebody who did sign up for sampler from the consumer side, and it was a very professional package that arrived with the products and encouraged them with what to do. So, Todd, it'd be great if you can share your experience with us and let us know how it goes. And we're going to talk about demos actually next week as we try to help you with that sort of success in the new market. So we look forward to doing that. I want to thank you again for being here with us today. I know that everybody's time is valuable. People are busy, and we appreciate you being here with us. And if you've got any questions about those price increases, then just let me know. And if there's something that we can do to help, then we'd be happy to be there with you. So thanks again for joining us on our Recipe for Success presented by FCC, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.